Here is Penance. It was actually really hard to find something that would kill her in an instant, and I didn't want to reuse Patriot again. She's really tough. You've probably seen Zafang's 718 solo with her and thinking she's thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, and you'd be right. But how does Penance get that extra cornstarch thickener? Let's find out. Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
Do you get it? Do you get the joke?
Penance is a Juggernaut Defender, which is a branch that can't be healed by ally attacks. You already know how these guys work. Medics and healer defenders can't heal them, but passive healing like Angelina's or Perfumer's talent will work. The branch trades being unhealable in very big quotes for extremely tanky stats, even higher than her normal defender compatriots. At max level in Trust, Penance has over 4.5 thousand HP with a whopping 900 attack and 600 defense. She also has 10 arts resistance. All of this is nice for Penance, but it's gonna be a little difficult to place her down due to her 36 DP cost at E2. Especially if you're starting out and don't have good vanguards, I would be careful about trying to place her down as soon as you can, since that might leave holes in your defense. Despite being unhealable, all Juggernaut defenders have some sort of self-sustain integrated into their talents, so if you don't have Sculptor or Angelina raised to healer, it's not that big of an issue. The bigger issue is you're not raising the best girl, but I'll yell at you at another time. Penance's first talent gives her shield equal to 50% of her max HP on deployment. If she gets the last hit on an enemy, she'll get shield equal to 10% of her max HP. You can relatively see how much barrier Penance has stored up by the white bar that goes from right to left on top of her HP bar, but there isn't an exact number in-game that tells you. This isn't like some Mudrock or Roberta shield that absorbs all the damage based on one hit instance. It's like Nightingale S2 or Shining S2 shield. Damage done to the shield bar is also affected by her defense and arts resistance stats, so basically think of Penance's barrier like a second HP bar. If the same damage instance depletes the barrier bar, it'll also go into her health bar. She can store shield up to 300% of her max HP, so in situations where you let her snowball kills to max shield, Penance can effectively have 18,600 HP, which, personally speaking, I don't know about you, but that's a lot. If Penance has barrier that's been granted by herself, her second talent makes her deal 50% of her current attack as arts damage to any enemy that attacks her. This also includes ranged enemies too, so she essentially becomes the ultimate playground bully of why are you hitting yourself? Enemies killed by this talent will also proc her first talent, so she can still get half her Fortnite shield potion. Since Penance has a longer than usual attack interval, this talent allows for her to not rely on her own attack interval to kill enemies for getting shield, which helps a lot with the last hitting she has to do. It also somewhat increases her DPS against a lot of small enemies, because those guys tend to have short attack intervals. Against big enemies that do big damage with slow attack speed, it won't do as much, but the damage isn't too negligible. Because Penance isn't as accessible to healing as other operators with her trait, damage to her HP is basically considered permanent damage to her. You really want to maximize barrier regen to make sure that nothing touches that precious HP bar, and you really don't want to use Warfarin S2 on her. That's practically half her HP gone right there. Ock buffing is a bit safer since the barrier can block this damage, and even if she didn't have any shield up, her 600 defense is way more than enough to basically negate the damage of the shots. The fact that her main way of self-sustain is killing enemies means that Penance without a bunch of stacked barrier will inevitably die to poison maps or just DOTs in general. This makes her sound really squishy, but if you feed Penance enough enemies, which in most situations is actually pretty easy, she becomes a monster of a tank. She was poisoned? What? That's crazy. She was like this when I found her. I rushed her to the hospital as soon as I could. I'm a good standing citizen. I have the right to remain silent. You're gonna have to speak to my lawyer. Penance's first skill makes her next attack deal an additional big hit as arts damage. If the skill is overcharged, basically after the regular skill bar is full, she charges it again. Her attack power is increased to 200% and she stuns the target for 5 seconds. Remember that overcharge stacks on top of the regular skill, so with overcharge, Penance does 2 hits, a physical damage one that's 200% of her attack, and an arts damage one that's 400% of her attack. That's a lot of damage. At M3, the skill only has an SP cost of 3, and overcharging it is another 3 SP, so it's not difficult to get Penance to dunk on an enemy. It's a usable skill, good for AFKing if that's your thing, but as with practically every other operator, your other skills are better. Penance's second skill makes her stop attacking and gives her a lot of shelter. Shelter is a non-stackable damage reduction that applies after defense and arts resistance, so having 60% of it at M3 is super good for her. Every second, she'll deal arts damage to enemies in the 8 surrounding tiles, and the talent 1 barrier gain will be increased by 100%, meaning Penance will get 20% of her max HP as barrier per enemy kill instead of 10%. The skill lasts 20 seconds, which is a bit on the shorter side, but the 30 SP cost isn't too bad. The skill is good for its AoE damage, and since Penance attacks every second now, she'll be more likely to get the last hits on enemies. This will allow her to get more shield, and she gets twice the shield per enemy kill. The barrier regen sounds really good on this skill, and it is, but if you're comparing this to her third skill, you're more likely to use this one for the AoE arts damage rather than the shield snowballing. Speaking of her third skill, Penance's final skill immediately gives her 130% of her max HP in barrier, making her extra dummy thick. It increases her attack interval by almost a second, but also increases her attack by 4 times its base. Penance also receives increased taunt during this. She doesn't get any increased barrier gain, but she will absolutely curb stomp any enemy that comes her way, including Patriot. The initial shield she gets from the skill activating is equal to almost 6000 HP, so it's not like she needed any increased barrier gain in the first place. Remember that she still gets shield whenever she kills an enemy, so the massive attack increase ensures she'll be stacking more and more shield every time she dunks someone. The fact that her Thorns talent is a multiplier means Penance with her 5 times base attack with this skill active will mean that enemies trying to get a doinky on her will suffer severe consequences. She even has increased taunt to make sure that she will 1v1 the entire world. The major downside to the skill is that it's defensive charge, meaning Penance has to get hit 20 times in order for you to press the win button. You'll have to feed Penance small enemies that don't hit too hard in order for her to snowball her HP into infinity, which isn't hard, it's just tedious. If only there was an operator that made other operators with defensive SP also charge offensively while also being a defender and having passive healing capabilities. I'm sure they don't exist yet. Some of you are probably super poor on resources right now and don't have the monners or mats to invest in 2 big, strong, tanky women. Penance did not power creep. Mudrock, please shut up. Mudrock's shields are hit-based rather than a bar like Penance, and she gets to naturally regenerate them every 9 seconds. This means Mudrock works better against enemies that hit super hard with slow attack intervals like Hammer Knight, Big Bob, or Steve Knight. It clearly shows itself in CC. CC3, Mudrock was used to tank Grudge Bears and Lancers. CC4, Mudrock was used to tank Big Bob. CC5, Mudrock was used to tank Blade Helm. CC6, Mudrock was used to tank the Duelist Crocs. You get the idea. This also means that Mudrock struggles against enemies in this middle zone that attacks semi-frequently and hit just enough for it to hurt. Penance, on the other hand, sucks against the slow attack interval hit super hard type enemies since she can't build a barrier fast enough to tank it. However, she excels against the enemies that Mudrock struggles with, but also comes with the small caveat of needing to be snowballed first. Penance was used in CC12 to handle the invisible caster, mortar, trash mob lane, and even though it doesn't sound impressive because it doesn't have any of those super strong enemies, the fact that she can handle the entire path herself with max risk enemies is a pretty big achievement. So which one should you build? Honestly, Penance is the better one for general content, which is what I assume most of you care about right now. Mudrock's still good for general content, don't get me wrong, but her peak potential is more enemy dependent than Penance. If you're wondering which skill to mastery, it's S3, it's not really a contest. Okay, that's about it. See ya. There is no way I'm getting charged for foul play. This was simply an accident. I refuse to pay for Texas's hospital bill. How was I supposed to know she was allergic to the combination of pizza and pineapple? She never told the waiter she was allergic to pineapple and pizza eaten together. I don't think I can handle 2 years of prison. You know a guy? Why don't you introduce me then?